A girl accidentally walked into the wrong hotel room and ended up spending the night with a wealthy heir. This small mistake led to an unexpected pregnancy. The heir happened to be the only male descendant in 9 generations of his family. To preserve the family bloodline, they were forced into marriage. The ordinary girl married into a wealthy family and began living a life of luxury. Before long, Myung stumbled upon a hidden room. Curiosity got the better of her, and she played a video stored inside. The footage showed her husband Lee Gun with his ex-girlfriend. Watching them look so happy and in love made Myung's emotions swirl. Just then, Lee Gun walked in. Seeing Myung watching his private video, he scolded her harshly. Then he handed her a document. Myung was shocked to discover it was a divorce agreement. It clearly stated that 10 months later, when the baby was born, they would automatically divorce. The Lee family would keep the child, and Lee Gun would pay Myung 1 billion won in compensation. His cold, heartless attitude deeply hurt her. She explained that she agreed to marry him to protect their baby and her hometown island. She also thought Lee Gun was someone worth spending her life with, but his behavior was too much to accept. Through tears, she signed the agreement. However, she deleted the 1 billion won compensation clause. She insisted she didn't marry him for money. She also demanded custody of the child herself. But Lee Gun couldn't accept her terms either. Unable to reach an agreement, Lee Gun remained resentful toward Myung. When he discovered his grandmother had prepared matching couple pajamas for them, he quickly took his off. His muscular abs startled Myung. He wouldn't even let her sleep on the bed. Instead, he made her sleep on the couch. To get revenge on whoever caused this mess, Lee Gun immediately sold the factory on Myung's hometown island to someone else. Despite Lee Gun's coldness toward her, when Myung's mom called to check in, Myung held back her sadness. She didn't want to make things difficult for Lee Gun or Chairwoman Wang. She told her mom Lee Gun treated her well and she was being pampered like a princess. Lee Gun overheard everything. He began to realize the accident wasn't Myung's fault at all. Meanwhile, Chairwoman Wang cherished Myung like a precious gem. When she learned Lee Gun made Myung sleep on the couch, she gave him a serious scolding. But Lee Gun refused to share a bed with her, claiming they had no feelings for each other. To help them bond, Chairwoman Wang pretended to be sick. She said she signed them up for prenatal classes. If they went, she could die without regrets. Though Lee Gun knew she was faking, he accompanied Myung to the class anyway to comfort her. During class, other couples were actively participating while they just sat there. The teacher called them to the front to serve as models for the whole class. This forced them to take it seriously. What they didn't expect was that the next lesson involved husbands giving their wives breast massages. The loving couples jumped right in, but for Lee Gun and Myung, it was incredibly awkward. Lee Gun had no choice but to pretend to massage her from a distance. The teacher was stunned by their performance and immediately came over to guide them hands-on. The moment Lee Gun's hand touched Myung, they both screamed. Everyone was terrified by the scene. To avoid further embarrassment, Myung claimed her stomach hurt and left the classroom. After class ended, Lee Gun told Myung they didn't need to attend anymore. His grandmother was just faking her illness, and he only came to put on a show for her. But Myung said that even though being together was awkward, she was happy attending prenatal class with her baby's father. Her words deeply moved Lee Gun. Myung headed home alone and ran into her neighbor Daniel. He was renovating his coffee shop, so Myung helped out. That evening, Daniel walked Myung home. Lee Gun happened to see them, which made him quite unhappy. Noticing the bandage on Myung's arm, Lee Gun asked what happened. Daniel explained he was Myung's neighbor and she got a minor scratch while helping with the renovation. Seeing them so friendly, Lee Gun said nothing, but he was actually quite jealous inside. Back home, while Lee Gun was on the phone with his assistant, a scream came from the bathroom. He rushed over to find the showerhead spraying water everywhere like it had a mind of its own. Lee Gun was stunned. He rushed to the bathtub and battled the possessed showerhead for what felt like forever before finally shutting it off. He learned that Myung had tried to rinse the floor after her shower but ended up in this mess. Seeing her soaked like a drowned rat, Lee Gun quickly wrapped her in a towel. His caring gesture warmed Myung's heart. After spending several days together, their relationship gradually warmed up. Soon it was time for another prenatal class. To avoid awkwardness, Myung didn't invite Lee Gun this time, but surprisingly, he showed up on his own. Working together closely, they even made a baby outfit by hand for their unborn child. Looking at the adorable outfit, Myung felt unprecedented warmth. That night, Lee Gun looked at what they created with pride. He couldn't help but gaze fondly at Myung sleeping on the couch. When Myung rolled over, Lee Gun caught her just in time. He simply carried her back to the bedroom and carefully placed her on the bed. Noticing the bandage on her hand, his jealousy flared up. He peeled it off and replaced it with one he applied himself. The next day, before Myung woke up, he even took their first selfie together. Soon after, Myung's mom came to the city for a wedding. Myung felt embarrassed to bother Lee Gun, so she didn't tell him. But while she was trying to figure out how to explain things to her mom, Lee Gun was already there. He was in the middle of a group of ladies, happily dancing along with them. Witnessing this surreal scene, Myung's jaw nearly dropped. She joined the enthusiastic crowd and danced to the music. Afterward, Myung's mom adored Lee Gun even more. Myung was relieved to see them getting along so well. Just as their relationship was improving, Lee Gun suddenly received a call. The person he'd sold the factory to planned to turn it into a garbage disposal site. Myung happened to be standing right behind him. Lee Gun was so scared he dropped his phone. Confused by his extreme reaction, Myung instinctively bent down to pick it up for him. To prevent her from discovering the truth, Lee Gun pulled her into his arms. The sudden romantic atmosphere startled Myung. She stammered, asking why he did that. realizing his overreaction. Lee Gun quickly let her go and turned the question back on her, asking why she tried to hug him from behind. Mayong was bewildered. To prevent Mayong from hearing the voice on the phone, Lee Gun stepped on it while walking away. Watching his bizarre behavior, Mayong felt like she'd married an idiot. The next day, to salvage the island factory, Lee Gun stormed into the other company. Without a word, he slapped his assistant to establish dominance. Then he made his firm stance about reclaiming the factory crystal clear. Through his combination of soft and hard tactics, the other party agreed to let him break the contract. What he didn't expect was that his half-brother Lee Yong quickly learned about this. To drive a wedge between Lee Gun and Mayong, Lee Yong anonymously sent Mayong the news about the island factory becoming a garbage site. Mayong was devastated. She couldn't tell what kind of person Lee Gun really was. She cried to Daniel, who was by her side. Just then, Lee Gun came looking for Mayong. To test Lee Gun's sincerity, Daniel pulled Mayong into his arms. Lee Gun immediately confronted Daniel, but Mayong left in tears, leaving Lee Gun completely confused. To cheer Mayong up, Lee Gun ordered a huge cake to share with her, but Mayong packed all her belongings and left after giving Lee Gun a scolding out of nowhere. Not understanding what happened, Lee Gun felt frustrated. He ate the cake while declaring he was finally free, but actually, he was worried sick about Mayong. He stayed up all night, constantly checking his phone, hoping for a message from her. Mayong had planned to return to her parents' home but ran into Daniel halfway. After Daniel's persuasion, she gave up on going home. Meanwhile, Lee Gun needed to pay hefty breach of contract penalties. When the board found out, they proposed removing him from office. To resolve this crisis, Lee Gun brought in a world-class designer to collaborate. To his complete surprise, the designer turned out to be Daniel. Even more unexpected, Daniel bluntly said he was only working with Lee Gun because of Mayong. Lee Gun's competitive spirit was instantly ignited, and he silently vowed to outdo Daniel. Soon after, Mayong's second sister and brother-in-law came to visit. To hide the fact they slept separately, they frantically tidied up the place at lightning speed. Then they took the couple sightseeing around the city. Watching how lovey-dovey they were, Mayong was deeply moved. She finally couldn't hold back and confronted Lee Gun about selling her hometown factory to a garbage site. Lee Gun wanted to explain, but the couple overheard them. They instantly flew into a rage and started fighting with Lee Gun. During the chaos, the pregnant sister suddenly went into labor. She grabbed Lee Gun's hair, making him scream in pain. In all this confusion, Lee Gun finally managed to say he hadn't actually sold the factory. But then the sister suddenly needed to deliver. Before Lee Gun could react, she was already pulling his hair. Worse yet, there wasn't a single doctor on the entire tour boat. So brother-in-law Lee Gun mobilized their family members. They pulled down curtains and set up a makeshift delivery table. Then they carefully placed the sister on it. Learning the tour boat needed 20 more minutes to dock, Lee Gun decided not to wait. He immediately used his tie to make a labor rope for his sister to grip. Then he started calculating contraction intervals. When he realized she was about to give birth, he cheered her on, telling her to push with all her strength. The brother-in-law took one look at the intense scene and fainted, but Lee Gun wasn't affected at all. He immediately had Mayong take over to check on the baby. Lee Gun and his sister chanted encouragement together. After their combined efforts, the baby was safely born. The family rushed to the hospital. Seeing how healthy the baby was, everyone praised Lee Gun. Mayong also learned from the family that Lee Gun had built a community center for their hometown. Mayong felt unprecedented happiness. Looking at the baby in his arms, Lee Gun experienced the joy of family bonding. After this incident, Lee Gun's feelings for Mayong deepened. He started caring more about her, letting her sleep in the bedroom while he took the couch. Not only that, when he saw Mayong reading prenatal stories to the baby alone, he actively joined in and performed the fairy tale with great expression. Mayong laughed heartily. In this warm and happy scene, Lee Gun had clearly accepted Mayong from the bottom of his heart. But Mayong knew this was just wishful thinking, so she texted Lee Gun saying she would follow through with the divorce agreement. When Lee Gun received the message, he came to her side. He told her she wasn't insignificant to him and that he would cherish their time together. Just as he was about to leave, he collapsed from back pain. After recovering a bit, Mayong suggested Lee Gun take the bed while she slept on the couch, but Lee Gun stopped her, saying the bed was better for a pregnant woman. Mayong couldn't bear to let Lee Gun sleep on the couch with his back pain. After some debate, they decided to sleep in the bed together. To avoid awkwardness, they made a gentleman's agreement to sleep like mannequins without crossing any boundaries. They lay there stiffly, but when they turned over, their eyes met. In that instant, the heartbeat of love pounded like drums. Mayong felt so flustered she tried to go sleep on the couch, but Lee Gun pulled her back. With his insistence, they really did sleep like mannequins all night. As their relationship grew stronger, Lee Gun felt increasingly guilty toward his girlfriend. He booked a flight to confess everything to her. Soon after, Lee Gun and Mayong attended another prenatal class. They were becoming more and more in sync. They even gave their baby the nickname Doggy. Then they went to the company. Lee Gun suddenly had the idea to bring Mayong inside. Mayong intended to quietly walk behind Lee Gun so she wouldn't be a burden, but Lee Gun took her hand and walked with her side by side. Mayong instantly felt the happiness of being the CEO's wife, but when they entered Lee Gun's office, his girlfriend Ciro's sudden appearance wiped away Mayong's happiness. Seeing Ciro hug Lee Gun, looking sweet and happy, Mayong felt mortified. she quickly turned to leave. But Lee Gun stopped her and was about to confess their relationship to Siro. Unexpectedly, Mayang interrupted and introduced herself as chairwoman's secretary. She pulled Lee Gun aside and told him not to confess yet because she feared Siro, who just returned to the country, couldn't handle it. She hoped Lee Gun would wait until he was fully prepared. This deeply moved Lee Gun. Mayang returned home in a daze. That night she couldn't sleep. She waited all night, but Lee Gun never came home. Lee Gun stayed by Siro's side all night, filled with guilt and anxiety. The next day, Lee Gun finally made up his mind. He planned to confess everything to Siro after her interview. But then he received a call from the hospital. When he rushed there in a panic, abandoning Siro, he learned Mayang's mom had gallstones. Mayang arrived too, so Lee Gun brought her home together. As they were about to enter, Siro unexpectedly appeared. She was carrying gifts to visit Lee Gun's grandmother. Faced with this awkward situation, Lee Gun decided to stop running away. He confessed his relationship with Mayang to Siro. Mayang felt too guilty to look at Siro. Siro stood frozen in shock, her umbrella falling to the ground. Then she walked away sadly in the rain. Back home, Lee Gun looked at the warm, happy moments he'd shared with Siro. Remembering how she'd talked about marrying him, he felt immense pain. Tears poured uncontrollably from his eyes, but he knew he couldn't let Mayang down anymore. Mayang was also tormented inside. She'd destroyed Lee Gun and Siro's beautiful relationship. She'd indirectly become a villain. As their relationship reached an impasse, Lee Gun's half-brother Lee Yong tried to ruin things to fight for inheritance rights. He brought reporters to spread rumors that Mayang deliberately got pregnant for money. Malicious news about Mayang spread like a virus. When Lee Gun discovered this, he immediately had his assistant remove the news at any cost. Meanwhile, to solidify Lee Gun's family position, Chairwoman Wang decided to publicly reveal Mayang's identity as the young mistress. She took Mayang to the family charity gala, but the malicious news about Mayang was already spreading everywhere. Shortly after Chairwoman Wang left, the women around Mayang started gossiping behind her back. Though Mayang felt deeply wronged, she silently endured it. As she was about to leave, Siro's friend stopped her and threw a drink in her face without warning. Mayang was utterly humiliated. But that wasn't the end. She ran into her ex-boyfriend, who went on stage and broadcast defamatory remarks about Mayang over the PA system. He exposed how she accidentally got pregnant with Lee Gun's child. Just when Mayang felt utterly hopeless, Lee Gun appeared. The ex-boyfriend immediately backed down. Lee Gun calmly recounted how he and Mayang met and made a long, passionate confession of love to her. Everyone present was deeply moved. Lee Gun then took Mayang to the riverside and danced with her to music. He had another surprise planned. After a countdown of 3, 2, 1, romantic fireworks bloomed across the sky. In this beautiful atmosphere, Lee Gun opened his heart to Mayang. He acknowledged how hard the contract marriage was for her. He'd been avoiding her because he wasn't ready. He was grateful she waited for him and stayed by his side. Mayang immediately began crying tears of emotion. With the romantic mood perfectly set, Lee Gun gently wiped away her tears and kissed her cheek. In that moment, Mayang finally felt truly loved. Back home, they lay in bed. The atmosphere felt a bit awkward again. So Lee Gun explained that his blood sugar was just low earlier, and he wanted something sweet, which is why he kissed her. He hoped she wouldn't misunderstand. Mayang said she understood completely. After all, she's pretty sweet herself. So they decided to sleep like mannequins again. But the devil inside Lee Gun was restless. His mischievous hands kept wanting to reach for Mayang, but he managed to control himself each time. However, his subconscious urges didn't stop even in his sleep. Seeing him like this, Mayang's heart melted. She felt increasingly reluctant to let him go. The next day, Mayang saw Lee Gun off. He kept pointing at his cheek, desperately hinting. Mayang thought she had something on her face. After Lee Gun teased her for being adorably clueless, she finally caught on. She immediately gave Lee Gun a loving kiss. At noon, Mayang's mom's restaurant had its grand opening. Lee Gun and Mayang worked hard there together. Even while frantically busy, they didn't forget to show affection. They were like the perfect couple. But while they were shamelessly in love, Siro found Mayang and questioned their relationship. She thought Lee Gun only stayed with Mayang because of the baby. His feelings for Mayang weren't real love. She said their marriage was just hurting both of them since they didn't come together out of love. She hoped Mayang would stop hurting Lee Gun. Mayang began to doubt their relationship. She even felt she'd ruined someone else's happiness. But when she got home and saw Lee Gun, she found herself reluctant to let him go again. To avoid becoming more infatuated with him, she started deliberately distancing herself. Even when making him lunch boxes, she became increasingly half-hearted. But the more she tried to distance herself, the more she realized her life couldn't function without Lee Gun. Lee Gun's bond with her family had grown deeper. He'd even secretly given money to her brother-in-law to open a store. When Mayang learned this, she completely broke down. Soon after, Mayang and Lee Gun attended a charity auction. They were shocked to see a cup with their baby's nickname, Doggy, among the auction items. Lee Gun's stepmother had deliberately taken it from their bedroom to embarrass Mayang. Just as Mayang felt mortified, Daniel bid 1 million won first. Since Daniel was an internationally renowned designer, his lead caused the cup's value to skyrocket. Everyone wanted to win it. To help Mayang keep the Doggy cup, Lee Gun finally bid 30 million won. Seeing Lee Gun sacrifice so much for her, Mayang couldn't hold it together anymore. She ran out of the venue crying. Lee Gun immediately chased after her to ask what was wrong. Mayang told him not to be so good to her. It was making her increasingly greedy and unable to let him go. But theirs was just a contract marriage, so she didn't dare hope for more. She wanted them to end it here. But right then, Lee Gun pulled her close and kissed her passionately. After their passionate moment, they sat on the steps, unable to recover for a long time. Aside from commenting, "Your technique is amazing," they were both too shy to say anything else. Back home, the devil inside Lee Gun awakened again. Just as his mischievous hand was reaching for Mayang, she rolled over and hugged him in her sleep. This made Lee Gun even harder to control. Just as he was about to cross the line, sleeping Mayang called out the baby's nickname. Lee Gun snapped back to consciousness instantly. To calm himself down, he took a 2-hour shower. The next day, his exhausted nerves drove Lee Gun to visit a psychiatrist. He told the doctor that an evil version of himself was hiding inside his body. His nearly manic behavior scared the doctor. After learning Lee Gun had someone he liked, the doctor explained it was perfectly normal to feel desire for someone you like. To help Lee Gun stay calm, the doctor suggested he read Buddhist scriptures. This method worked immediately. Meanwhile, their love story kept appearing in the papers. They became the nation's model couple, which made Lee Gun very happy. As their relationship heated up rapidly, they became inseparable. To create a better environment for their child, they went to a baby store together and bought tons of baby supplies. Back home, they immediately set everything up. Through their efforts, their romantic couple's world transformed into a warm family home. During their conversation, they suddenly discovered they shared the same birthday. They were both thrilled and marveled at how their connection was destined. To celebrate, Mayang painted Lee Gun a cup just like doggies. Lee Gun booked a restaurant in advance and planned out their romantic birthday itinerary. What they never expected was that while they were dreaming about their beautiful future together, Lee Gun's stepmother accidentally entered the secret room and found their divorce agreement. She was absolutely delighted. She immediately found her accomplices and started plotting to fight for the inheritance. Soon after, news of Lee Gun and Mayang's fake marriage spread everywhere. The family elders quickly came to Lee Gun's house to hold him accountable. Faced with this sudden blow, Chairwoman Wang couldn't believe it. She asked if they'd been falsely accused, but Mayang didn't dare lie and admitted it was true. Chairwoman Wang nearly fainted and beat Lee Gun furiously. In the midst of the chaos, Mayang's mom also arrived at the Lee household after hearing the news. She gave Lee Gun a thorough scolding. Though Mayang and Lee Gun begged desperately, insisting their love was real, Mayang's mom felt Lee Gun had seriously hurt their family's feelings. She insisted on taking Mayang away. In that instant, their happy life came to an abrupt end. The scandal of their fake marriage was making headlines everywhere. Countless reporters blocked Lee Gun's front door. His grandmother also collapsed from disappointment. Seeing the disaster he'd caused, Lee Gun felt terrible regret. He kept apologizing to his grandmother and told her about his relationship journey with Mayang. After hearing everything, his grandmother understood and sympathized with him. Just when Lee Gun didn't know what to do, his assistant rushed in with more bad news. The fake marriage scandal had blown up so much that defamatory reports about the company were everywhere online. Their products were being boycotted. The entire company's operations were at risk. The assistant hoped Lee Gun could handle it immediately, but Lee Gun couldn't focus on the work report at all. All he could think about was that today was Mayang's birthday. He didn't want to miss their first birthday together like this. To avoid the reporters at the door, Lee Gun and his subordinates disguised themselves as students, but reporters still surrounded them. So Lee Gun slapped his subordinates twice. After this absurd drama, the reporters were completely stunned. Lee Gun and his assistant took the opportunity to escape. Meanwhile, Mayang's brother-in-law served soybean drinks to reporters blocking the restaurant. Mayang and her friend Suyin tried to sneak away in student disguises during the confusion, but the reporters wouldn't let up. To fool the reporters, Lee Yong suddenly confessed his feelings to Mayang publicly, but this bland plot had no appeal, so Suyin simply pulled Lee Yong over and kissed him wildly. This unexpectedly dramatic scene immediately won the reporters' cheers. While everyone was distracted by the spectacle, Mayang successfully escaped. She went to their agreed meeting place and happily waited for Lee Gun to arrive. What she didn't expect was that Lee Gun had run into trouble. While rushing to meet her, the assistant learned the company was holding an emergency shareholders meeting. The shareholders planned to remove Lee Gun from his position. To save the situation, the assistant quickly changed direction toward the company, but Lee Gun forcibly ordered him to stop the car. He insisted on seeing Mayang despite all warnings. But just then, he suddenly became disoriented and collapsed. The assistant rushed him to the hospital for emergency treatment. On the other side, Zero also saw the news about Lee Gun's fake marriage. She thought she and Lee Gun still had a chance, so she immediately returned to Korea. When she arrived at the hospital, she found Lee Gun had become a completely different person. He was not only warm towards Zero but also said strange things. After the doctor's explanation, they learned Lee Gun's hereditary illness had flared up. He'd lost his memory and only remembered Zero as his girlfriend. This made Zero both sad and relieved. She immediately pulled Lee Gun into her arms. Meanwhile, Mayang rushed to the hospital after learning Lee Gun was sick, but she saw her husband holding his ex-girlfriend in his arms. Mayang was stunned. Even more shocking, her husband walked right past her holding his ex's hand without even glancing at her. It was like she was a complete stranger. Mayang felt heartbroken but could do nothing. Zero told Mayang that Lee Gun had amnesia. He'd forgotten Mayang and only remembered Zero as his girlfriend. The doctor specifically warned not to forcibly restore his memory, or his brain would suffer more trauma. Hearing this news devastated Mayang, but to avoid avoid worrying her family, she didn't tell her mom. The next day, she went to the hospital to ask about Lee Gun's condition. The doctor warned her again not to stimulate him. Just then, Lee Gun walked in. Seeing them looking at his scans, Lee Gun got angry. He demanded to know why the doctor was sharing his private information with a stranger. The terrified doctor lied, saying Mayong was Lee Gun's personal secretary. So Mayong transformed into Lee Gun's secretary. Though this wasn't the outcome she'd hoped for, she was happy to stay by his side openly. Soon after, Lee Gun accidentally discovered the scandal about his marriage to Mayong. He immediately flew into a rage and summoned Mayong for a scolding. He couldn't believe he'd give up his beloved Siro to be with Mayong. He also insisted that, since they'd signed a divorce agreement, he'd follow through with it. Once Mayong gave birth, she could take the money and leave. Mayong was heartbroken but helpless. Lee Gun and Siro then started dating shamelessly. But during one of their dates, they ran into the prenatal class teacher, who asked about Mayong. This annoyed Siro. She urged Lee Gun to cut ties with Mayong quickly, which put him in a difficult position. After Lee Gun was discharged and returned home, he discovered the house was full of baby supplies he and Mayong had prepared together. There was also a prenatal diary documenting their learning journey together. Reading through the detailed records, Lee Gun inexplicably started crying. Memories of falling in love with Mayong flooded his mind. In that moment, he finally remembered that the person he truly loved was Mayong. He rushed to her house. He wanted to reunite with her, but suddenly remembered something important. So he drove away again. He immediately went to see the doctor and asked about his condition. The doctor explained that his sudden amnesia was related to the hereditary illness. He would likely pass away around age 30, just like his ancestors. Learning this news devastated Lee Gun. To avoid causing more pain to those around him, he found Siro and broke up with her, completely ending their relationship. Then he called his lawyer and had him draw up a will. After their divorce, full custody would go to Mayong along with 2 billion won in compensation. After Lee Gun's death, all his assets would be inherited by Mayong. Lee Gun then found Mayong and broke up with her, saying he'd give up custody of the child. He did this to spare Mayong from suffering. But what he didn't expect was that before he saw Mayong, Siro had met with her. Siro lied, saying Lee Gun considered the baby a burden. Now hearing Lee Gun say he'd give up custody, Mayong was completely devastated. So she agreed to break up. Lee Gun walked Mayong out. Before parting, Lee Gun said many encouraging words to her. As Mayong was leaving sadly, she suddenly realized the encouragement Lee Gun gave her today was the same as before. She realized Lee Gun had regained his memory. She ran toward him. But just then, a car struck her down. Hearing the sharp sound of impact, Lee Gun was horrified. He immediately rushed Mayong to the hospital for emergency treatment. Crying, he begged the doctor to save his wife. Lying on the emergency table, Mayong kept pleading with the doctor to save her baby. Then she lost consciousness. The doctor quickly ushered Lee Gun out and began the emergency surgery. Lee Gun waited anxiously outside the operating room. But before long, the doctor delivered terrible news. Since Mayong's surgery required general anesthesia, they couldn't save the baby. Lee Gun was thunderstruck and collapsed into a chair. His heart felt dead. He silently stood guard outside the operating room, only hoping Mayong would be safe. Soon after, Mayong woke from her coma. Her first question was about the baby, but Lee Gun could only tell her the baby was gone. Mayong was devastated. Then her mom arrived at the hospital room. Seeing her mom made Mayong even more emotional. She couldn't catch her breath and fainted again. Lee Gun felt all of this was his fault. If not for his hereditary illness, perhaps they could have lived happily as a family. He wished he could trade his life for their child's, but that was just fantasy. His grandmother feared he might do something drastic, so she kept counseling him. Soon after, Mayong recovered and was discharged. She quickly found Lee Gun and asked why he pretended to have amnesia after regaining his memory. Was her existence really such a burden to him? Lee Gun said that whether he had amnesia or not, their ending was already determined. Mayong then asked him one final question. Could they forget everything and start over? But Lee Gun knew that because of his hereditary illness, his days might be numbered. Rather than continue causing Mayong pain in the future, it was better to make a clean break now. So he coldly rejected her. After the divorce, Mayong came to the Lee house to pack her things. Looking at the prenatal diary she'd kept, beautiful memories with Lee Gun flooded her mind. Her grief finally became uncontrollable. Tears poured out. After composing herself, she said a final goodbye to his grandmother. Since grandmother had also experienced the pain of losing a spouse to the hereditary illness, she didn't try to stop Mayong from leaving. Mayong visited Daniel afterward, to help her forget past pain. Daniel suggested she study art in Paris. Mayong's life had always been controlled by others. To start a new life and heal her inner wounds, she decided to go to Paris with Daniel. Learning this news, Lee Gun rushed to see Mayong one last time, but he ultimately missed her. 3 years later, Mayong returned as an accomplished international artist. She came back to hold a solo exhibition and played at romantic flirtation with Daniel. Lee Gun had been fighting his illness and overcame the hereditary condition. When they met again, Mayong found Siro still by Lee Gun's side. Though they'd been divorced for years, seeing Lee Gun and Siro so close together made her heart sink a little. But what she didn't know was that to Lee Gun, Siro was just a good friend. the person he truly cared about was still Mayang. Since Mayang left, Lee Gun often visited her mom. Besides showing filial respect, he really wanted news about Mayang. Soon after, he learned about Mayang's exhibition. Seeing how successful she'd become made him proud. To see Mayang again, he used a business trip as an excuse to attend the exhibition. As always, Lee Gun booked room 2006, but the staff accidentally gave him 2009. By coincidence, Mayang was staying in room 2006. Their rooms were right across from each other. After a long mental struggle in his hotel room, Lee Gun finally made up his mind. He secretly snuck into the exhibition, but he didn't dare face Mayang directly. He could only watch his former love from a distance. While touring the exhibition, he saw a painting titled Longing. It depicted their child, Lee Doggy. This deeply moved him. He immediately called a staff member and bought the painting without hesitation. What he didn't expect was that the painting wasn't actually for sale, it was just on display. Mayang hadn't anticipated it would sell so quickly, so she had to contact the buyer, hoping to convince them to purchase a different piece instead. Lee Gun panicked when he got the call. He quickly hung up. Then they communicated via text messages. After 3 years apart, these two people who once loved each other reconnected in this special way. That evening, Mayang and her colleagues held a celebration party. Lee Gun secretly watched from the sidelines. Seeing Mayang so close with Daniel made him incredibly uncomfortable. What he absolutely didn't expect was that their colleagues started egging them on to kiss. The two kept getting closer. Lee Gun wanted to rush over and pull them apart, so he immediately launched into a Chinese rap performance. Mayang and Daniel's attention was successfully diverted. To prevent them from getting intimate again, Lee Gun arranged to meet Mayang as the buyer. When Mayang arrived at the park, Lee Gun texted saying he had a high fever and couldn't make it. Unable to reclaim the painting, Mayang felt disappointed, so she told the buyer the story behind the artwork, hoping they'd understand her situation. Lee Gun felt terribly guilty after reading it. He could only drown his sorrows in alcohol. While Mayang was looking through the prenatal diary, she suddenly heard violent knocking at the door. She was terrified, but when she opened it, she discovered the person knocking was a drunk Lee Gun who'd gone to the wrong room. Before Mayang could figure out what was happening, Lee Gun passed out. She had no choice but to bring him into her room. Faced with Lee Gun's reappearance, Mayang's heart stirred again, but remembering how cruelly he'd abandoned her, she immediately suppressed her feelings. When Lee Gun woke up the next day, he found a note Mayang had left. It said she hoped they wouldn't meet again. Lee Gun felt very sad. He thought they really wouldn't see each other again, but unexpectedly. Soon after, Lee Yong and the assistant suggested collaborating with a young female artist to build the company's brand image. The person they wanted to work with was Mayang. Lee Gun jumped up excitedly, but the next second, he scolded his brother Lee Yong. He said his ex-wife absolutely wouldn't work. Though she was internationally famous, she wasn't yet recognized domestically. But his real reason for rejecting the proposal wasn't doubting his ex-wife's abilities. He simply didn't know how to face the woman he'd hurt. What Lee Gun didn't expect was that Lee Yong privately arranged to meet Mayang and tricked Lee Gun into coming too. Faced with such an awkward situation, he immediately gave Lee Yong a harsh scolding. But inside, he was actually thrilled, because now he could legitimately see Mayang. But what he didn't anticipate was that Mayang refused the collaboration proposal without hesitation. She said her value was higher than Lee Gun imagined. Lee Gun was amused. He immediately said he was so poor, all he had was money. She could name her price, but Mayang said she was no longer the Mayang he used to know. Constantly meeting would only make her uncomfortable. She hoped they truly wouldn't meet again. Lee Gun felt disappointed and had to abandon the idea of collaboration. Since he couldn't see Mayang, Lee Gun continued playing the buyer role to stay in touch with her. He even played the role of a caring confidant, always listening to her troubles. One day, he suddenly learned Daniel planned to propose to Mayang, so he quickly urged her to think carefully. After his persuasion, Mayang became more uncertain. The next day, Lee Gun learned Mayang was about to leave the country. Combined with Mayang mentioning Daniel's upcoming proposal, Lee Gun panicked. He quickly said he wanted to return the painting to Mayang and arranged to meet her. Meanwhile, Daniel also invited Mayang to a small theater. Then Daniel created a sand painting for Mayang, reviewing their journey of getting to know each other. Lee Gun also rushed to the theater, but he was a step too late. Daniel had already reached Mayang's side, kneeling on one knee to propose. Seeing this scene, Lee Gun could only leave in disappointment. However, Mayang didn't accept Daniel's proposal. Though she was grateful Daniel stayed with her during her pain and became her life mentor, and though she felt if she were to start a family with anyone, Daniel would be the most suitable person, she still didn't know if her feelings for him were gratitude or true love. So she couldn't accept his proposal. Though Daniel felt disappointed, he respected Mayang's choice. He decided to approach her as a man from now on. He hoped she'd give him another chance. Mayang readily agreed. Soon after, Lee Gun came to Mayang's mom's restaurant for a meal as usual. Unexpectedly, Mayang also showed up. Her mom quickly told Lee Gun to leave, but Mayang stopped him. The whole scene became incredibly awkward. Lee Gun wanted to say something, but Mayang told him to stop bothering her mom. So Lee Gun explained this was just his personal relationship with his former mother-in-law. It had nothing to do with Mayang. The subordinate suggested suggestion to work with Mayong was purely business with no personal feelings involved. To prove he wasn't stalking Mayong, Lee Gun even used reverse psychology. He said if Mayong didn't agree, it meant she was afraid of contact with him and choosing to run away. Unexpectedly, this tactic worked. To prove herself, Mayong immediately agreed to the collaboration. Lee Gun was overjoyed. He immediately started fantasizing about being able to summon Mayong at will as the client. So after signing the contract, he deliberately emphasized his client status, wanting to invite his ex-wife Mayong to dinner to improve their relationship. But Mayong said Lee Gun's company was begging to work with her, so she was the real client. Then she left without looking back. Lee Gun was completely dumbfounded. He could only admire how Mayong had become so formidable. After reaching a cooperation agreement with Lee Gun's company, Mayong started working overtime on product design, but she couldn't find thematic inspiration, so she contacted Lee Gun's assistant, manager Cho, requesting to visit the company's botanical garden. She went there to collect creative materials. Meanwhile, Lee Gun was also inspecting the botanical garden. After discovering Mayong was there sketching, he secretly watched her from a distance. When her sketches blew away, he quietly picked them up and tucked them away, but he almost got caught, so he pretended to be a bird and started making bird calls. Unexpectedly, Mayong got very excited. She made mother bird calls too, trying to lure the male bird out to photograph. They sang bird calls back and forth like this. This made Mayong sense something unusual. She immediately circled around behind Lee Gun. He was terrified. Mayong wanted to ask why he kept following her, but just then, it suddenly started pouring rain. Lee Gun quickly used his jacket to shield Mayong from the rain. Though they got soaked like drowned rats, they felt the long-lost feeling of being in love. They then went to the botanical gardens villa to escape the rain. The staff told them that due to the heavy rain, the mountain was closed off. They couldn't return and would have to stay the night. Lee Gun immediately cursed the damned weather, but inside, he was secretly delighted. Just then, heaven provided another assist. After a thunderclap, the villa lost power. They had no choice but to light candles. By the dim candlelight, Lee Gun reminisced about their experiences together. Mayong felt increasingly sad and stood up to leave, but she nearly fainted from catching a chill and almost fell. Lee Gun tried to stop her, but Mayong insisted on leaving. During their struggle, Mayong passed out. Lee Gun then took care of her all night until her fever broke. When Mayong woke up and saw Lee Gun looking haggard from lack of sleep, her heart stirred again. But thinking about how Lee Gun had abandoned her, her emotions became conflicted. In the end, she left a note for Lee Gun and left alone. This made Lee Gun feel very disappointed. Soon after, Lee Yong and manager Cho prepared to deliver reference materials to Mayong. Lee Gun happened to see this. To constantly stay by Mayong's side, he claimed these were confidential company documents that couldn't leave the building. Mayong had to come to the company to review them, so Mayong had no choice but to work at the company. Having achieved his goal, Lee Gun immediately got to work. First, he brought a whole cart of supplements and fruit, telling Mayong to eat them whenever she was tired. Then he sat beside her, staring at her intently. This made Mayong very uncomfortable, so she asked him to leave. To stay, Lee Gun pretended his leg was cramping, but Mayong just looked at him like he was an idiot. He had no choice but to leave awkwardly. At midnight, Mayong prepared to leave the company. Facing the eerie company building, she felt a bit scared, but unexpectedly, the hallway lights automatically turned on. No matter where she walked, the lights lit up automatically. Even when she reached the elevator, it automatically opened. Then she arrived at the lobby. What surprised her even more was that a taxi was already waiting for her. Mayong was delighted, but what she didn't know was that all of this was Lee Gun's quiet expression of love. Soon after, Mayong and Lee Gun's company collaboration was a huge success, earning widespread praise. But instead of congratulating her, Lee Gun seemed unhappy, because this was Lee Gun's only chance to reconcile with his ex-wife. He hadn't expected their collaboration to end so quickly. After the launch event, Mayong prepared to leave the company. Lee Gun stopped her. He invited her to dinner again, but Mayong rejected him once more. Though Lee Gun had anticipated being rejected, he still felt very disappointed. Back home, Mayong immediately thanked her, caring confidant. It was thanks to the confidant's hints that she found design inspiration, but she didn't know the caring confidant who'd been listening to her troubles was actually Lee Gun. Then she said a final goodbye to the confidant. She was heading to Paris. She hoped the confidant would keep her most cherished painting safe for her. Learning Mayong was leaving, Lee Gun decided to secretly return the painting of their child to her so she wouldn't leave Korea all alone. But when he arrived at her studio, he saw the painting that symbolized their love token. Lee Gun suddenly understood that Mayong had never forgotten him. Just then, Mayong also came to the studio. Seeing him holding the painting of their child, Mayong instantly realized the person who'd been listening to her confessions was Lee Gun. This made her very angry. She demanded to know why he was torturing her like this. By now, Lee Gun knew Mayong couldn't forget the pain he'd caused her, so he decided to let her go. He told Mayong he did it just for fun. Mayong asked if the encouragement and comfort he gave her during their chats was sincere. To prevent Mayong from developing feelings again, Lee Lee Gun could only say it was all fake. He advised her not to dwell on the past. They ultimately parted on bad terms. On the eve of Mayong's departure, her friend Suyeon came to see her. Mayong had always thought Lee Gun was dating Siro, but chatting with Suyeon, she learned Lee Gun had been single for 3 years. This struck her as very strange. Soon after, Mayong prepared to unwrap the painting, but inside the packaging, she found a note Lee Gun had left for her. It still contained words of encouragement. She immediately compared their chat records with the note. After reviewing them, she found it hard to believe these were just Lee Gun's false feelings. With this question, she sought out Lee Gun again and asked once more if what he'd said in their chats was sincere. Lee Gun still said it was all fake. Unable to get the answer she wanted, Mayong sadly left. When she reached the lobby, she ran into Lee Gun's legal advisor, Attorney Hong. Since Attorney Hong had been Mayong's former boss, they exchanged pleasantries. Learning Mayong was returning to Paris, Attorney Hong wanted to reveal Lee Gun's secret but ultimately held back. When Mayong got home to organize her documents for departure, she found a voice recorder Attorney Hong had secretly placed in her bag. After listening to the recording, she sensed Lee Gun was hiding something from her, but Daniel had already packed everything. So Mayong had no choice but to follow him to the airport. But during the journey, Mayong was sullen. Daniel saw everything. With a sharp turn, he reversed direction and drove Mayong to Lee Gun's house instead. Mayong then arrived at Lee Gun's home. She wanted to get answers from him, but his grandmother said he'd gone out. So Mayong decided to wait for his return. She walked into Lee Gun's secret hideaway and discovered all the baby supplies they'd purchased together were still there. Then Mayong finally understood Lee Gun had never forgotten their child. She then played the projector. Inside was Lee Gun's will. In that moment, Mayong finally understood Lee Gun chose to break up to avoid burdening her. She cried heartbroken, only regretting she'd learned the truth too late. Meanwhile, news of Lee Gun's terminal illness was spreading everywhere in society. To prevent his health issues from affecting the company, Lee Gun held a press conference announcing his resignation as company president. Public opinion erupted immediately. Lee Gun's enemies wore smug, triumphant smiles. But just then, Mayong burst into the press conference. She loudly proclaimed she now knew the reason Lee Gun left her. She demanded to know why, if he loved her so much. He didn't face it bravely instead of running away. But Lee Gun no longer dared hope for happiness. He didn't want to hold Mayong back anymore. So he planned to drive her away from his side again. But this time, Mayong was prepared to face difficulties with Lee Gun. She demanded to know why he was sad, hopeless, and suffering over an illness that hadn't even struck yet. Lee Gun believed that whether Mayong was willing to face it with him or not, his illness wouldn't change. So he didn't deserve to love her. But Mayong didn't care about any of that. She pulled Lee Gun close and kissed him passionately. So what was originally a resignation press conference had now become a massive love announcement scene. They then returned to the hotel. Now Lee Gun had finally found the courage to face life with Mayong. He was very happy. He thought Mayong would give him some loving encouragement. But unexpectedly, Mayong grabbed his face. Because he'd made her suffer for 3 years. If Lee Gun hadn't deliberately lied and hidden things, their child would be 3 years old by now. Faced with this painful yet happy punishment, Lee Gun instantly became addicted. He wanted Mayong to punish the other side too. But now Mayong couldn't bear to do it. Lee Gun then shyly asked Mayong to stay the night before leaving. Unexpectedly, Mayong immediately agreed. Lee Gun was incredibly excited. Then bedtime arrived. What Lee Gun hadn't anticipated was that the distance between them was wider than a basketball court. Lee Gun asked Mayong what was going on. Mayong said she just didn't want to waste the room fee. She told Lee Gun not to overthink it. To get closer to Mayong, Lee Gun suggested they discuss current international affairs. Suddenly, Mayong wasn't sleepy at all with such an interesting topic. Lee Gun then chatted with Mayong about global warming. They quickly moved on to discussing current weather conditions. To solve the problem of air being too dry in the room, they immediately decided to kiss and hydrate each other. But just as they were about to kiss, Lee Gun's phone suddenly rang. Lee Gun instantly became irritated. But to avoid ruining the romantic atmosphere, he answered anyway. He learned that their love story at the press conference had moved the entire nation. The company had weathered the crisis. The board also temporarily disagreed with Lee Gun's resignation. In short, everything was looking great, but Lee Gun was furious. He hung up without a word. Because right now, nothing was more important than hydration. Lee Gun immediately rushed to Mayong's side. But Mayong had already fallen asleep from exhaustion. So Lee Gun could only quietly sleep beside her. The next day, they found Chairwoman Wang and expressed their desire to stay together. After hearing this, Chairwoman Wang felt very bad for Mayong. She didn't want Mayong to follow in her footsteps, but seeing them so inseparable, she reluctantly agreed. The condition was they had to get Mayong's mom's consent. The two felt very confident about grandmother's condition. They believed their undying devotion would definitely move Mayong's mom. But as soon as they suggested staying together, Mayong's mom immediately objected. To elope with Mayong, Lee Gun traded houses with her friend and gave his mansion to the friend. Faced with such a bold decision, friend Suyeon was thrilled. She immediately moved all her luggage to Lee Gun's house. But she wasn't happy about the mansion. She was happy because she could finally live with Lee Yong, whom she liked. She'd already decided to turn this age gap romance into a done deal. Lee Yong's snobbish mom was utterly shocked. Meanwhile, Lee Gun and Mayong nicely decorated Suyun's place and began living their shameless two-person world. But nobody expected that the next day, Lee Gun's hereditary illness would flare up, causing him to lose his memory again. To awaken Lee Gun's memory, Mayong tried various ways to introduce herself. Finally, Lee Gun remembered. He asked Mayong if she was Zhang Nara. Mayong was instantly dumbfounded. She angrily slapped him. Lee Gun finally woke up. It had all been a nightmare, but reality was scarier than the nightmare. Because even now, Mayong's mom still hadn't agreed to their reunion. To convince her, Lee Gun took a long vacation. Then every day, he brought gifts to Mayong's mom's restaurant and found different ways to make her happy. But since learning Lee Gun could pass away at any time from his hereditary illness, her attitude had become very firm. She absolutely refused to let her daughter suffer like that. Lee Gun completely understood how she felt, so he prepared for a long campaign, planning to keep trying until she agreed. Seeing he wouldn't give up, Mayong's mom earnestly advised Lee Gun. She said she'd always treated him like her own son and would continue to do so. But she couldn't bear to watch Mayong jump into a fire pit. As a widow herself, she knew how hard and painful that path was. Lee Gun left feeling disappointed, but he didn't give up. The next day, he showed up at the hair salon where Mayong's mom was getting her hair done. He started distributing health supplements to all her neighbors and praised them profusely. The ladies were all smiles. After Lee Gun left, the ladies all praised Mayong's mom for finding such a good son-in-law. Hearing this, Mayong's mom's heart began to waver. Seeing Lee Gun work so hard to convince her mom, Mayong felt bad. She cooked him a bowl of seafood kimchi ramen. Faced with such top-tier cuisine, Lee Gun didn't want to enjoy it alone, so they shared it together. Unexpectedly, they ended up slurping the same noodle. In that instant, the romantic atmosphere exploded, so they immediately kissed passionately. Energized by this kiss, they were both full of energy. The next day, Mayong accompanied Lee Gun to convince her mom. To prove he was healthy, Lee Gun started performing a pole dance without hesitation, with 2 poles. Seeing Mayong's mom still didn't believe him, Lee Gun and Mayong did sweet sit-ups together. After all this, they were so exhausted their lungs nearly burst. But they didn't dare stop. Though Mayong's mom didn't say anything, seeing them so in love touched her heart. So the next day, she called Lee Gun to the restaurant and officially accepted their reunion. Faced with such joyous news, mother and son immediately danced to music. Soon after, they held another wedding. But nobody expected that on their wedding day, the couple mysteriously disappeared. They'd secretly gone on their honeymoon. While relaxing at a bar, 2 people in black handed the bartender a love potion. The bartender then served the newlyweds cocktails spiked with the potion. The unsuspecting couple drank them in one gulp. The conspirators immediately showed triumphant smiles. Before long, the love potion took effect. Mayong stumbled back to the room leaning against the wall. Lee Gun couldn't hold out much longer either. Soon he was completely disoriented, greeting paintings on the wall while staggering back to the room. But due to his confused state, he went to the wrong room. He struggled for ages but couldn't open the door. Manager Cho and Lee Yong, who'd been following behind, immediately came forward to tell him he had the wrong room. With their help, Lee Gun finally found the right direction and returned to his room. When he got there, the after effects of the potion were so strong that Lee Gun collapsed and fell asleep immediately. Their wedding night passed in confusion like this. The next day, seeing the mess everywhere, they were both panicking. This instantly reminded them of what happened 3 years ago in Macau. They'd also spent a confused night together then. While they were completely puzzled, Lee Gun finally remembered walking into the wrong room last night. The people who helped him were Manager Cho and Lee Yong. Lee Gun furiously knocked on the opposite room. Discovering it really was those 2 causing trouble, Lee Gun was about to explode. He immediately demanded to know why they ruined his wedding night. Manager Cho and Lee Yong felt very wrong too. They said this was all Chairwoman Wang's arrangement. It turned out that not long ago, when Lee Gun and Mayong planned to hold another wedding, Chairwoman Wang was very happy. She urged Lee Gun to give her a grandchild quickly, but Lee Gun felt he hadn't had enough of their sweet 2-person world. He wanted to wait 6 months. Chairwoman Wang firmly disagreed. She was focused on quickly having a grandchild. So grandfather and grandson had serious disagreements. Lee Gun simply disappeared with Mayong after the wedding. To make Lee Gun comply, Chairwoman Wang had to send Manager Cho and Lee Yong to execute the love potion plan. After learning the whole story, Mayong was even angrier than Lee Gun. She wanted to beat them up. Fortunately, Lee Gun stopped her. Though their romantic wedding night was ruined, they quickly recovered their spirits. Their sweet life continued. As the romantic atmosphere intensified, they kissed passionately again. Since what follows isn't appropriate to watch, we'll skip ahead. A month later, Lee Gun and Chairwoman Wang waited anxiously outside the examination room. Soon Mayong brought good news. She was pregnant with twins. Lee Gun and Chairwoman Wang were overjoyed. Lee Gun also sadly realized his long-awaited 2-person world had ended like this. 3 years later, Lee Gun went to the hospital for a checkup. This time he also received good news. His hereditary illness was cured. Now he could boldly enjoy life. Lee Gun felt very comforted. Then he lived happily ever after with his family. Their story ends here. In the story's finale, Daniel found his long-lost sister, who turned out to be Lee Gun's ex-girlfriend Siro. Though they lost love, they gained family. Lee Yong and Suyeon officially met both families. That's when they learned Suyeon was actually a wealthy heiress. Everyone was happy. Myung's mom also fell in love with the bald guy and enjoyed a happy twilight romance. Suddenly the whole world was filled with a romantic atmosphere. Thus concludes the Korean drama, Fated to Love You. I spent 190 hours making this plot explanation. If you can, please give me a like and follow. Thank you all for watching. I'm Dino K-Drama. See you in the next Korean drama.